Hey guys, how's it going? So different type of video today. I'm reviewing the Legion 5 desktop tower. I usually love gaming laptops. Gaming laptops are the reason why I even started this channel, and if it was up to me, I would just mostly be using a gaming laptop, but right now prices are just way too insane. If you want top tier performance from a gaming laptop, you're spending way more money than I feel like you should be. And overall, if you look at the performance numbers from when the 40 series laptop GPUs came out, even the 50 series came out, there just really isn't much of a difference when it comes to gaming, especially when you're just looking at rasterized performance. So one day what I was wondering is, like, if I want to get an equivalence of what an RTX 5090 laptop GPU would be, what GPU and how much would I have to spend on a desktop? And then the answer came back as $2,099 for this Legion 5. And even better, I got mine from Best Buy open box for like $1,800 after tax. So man, I was just super excited. So with that being said, let's review this Lenovo Legion 5 tower. Let's go over some basic specs. It's got a Ryzen 7 7800X3D, which I know isn't the latest and greatest, but when I was looking up some of the performance in gaming, it didn't seem like it was that much more. And the 9800X3D was just a ton more expensive for not much else gains, at least when you're talking about gaming. Productivity, there's probably a different argument to be made there, but I'm talking about gaming today. And on top of that, it's got a desktop RTX 5070. So I don't click off yet if you're used to gaming laptops. The desktop 5070 is a very different part than the laptop 5070. It's a gigantic difference. Without spoiling too much, this performs somewhere between a 5080 laptop and a 5090 laptop. And I'm talking about the gaming laptops that use all 175 watts TGP of that GPU. And this particular model also comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM. If you're only gaming, you do not need more than that. Do not overspend on 64 gigabytes of RAM in today's market. Because I do these YouTube videos, I benefit a lot from 64 gigabytes of RAM. That's why typically the laptops I buy have that. Usually it was like a few $100s upgrade before, and now it's like a $700-800 upgrade to get 64 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're only gaming, don't even look at that. But before I get ahead of myself too much, let's start off with the build and design, because this is a chunky box and it'll either be sitting on your floor or on your desk. So it better at least look good. And thankfully, in my opinion, it does. I like the curve angles. Definitely very understated overall in terms of the design. It's black. Doesn't really command too much attention except for the RGB, but that can be taken off if you did want it off. I love the grille design at the top. It looks really cool, really sophisticated, and it's just a nice, simple box. And one thing I really do like about this particular model is, compared to all the desktops that I've checked out before, it's not too big. So I'm able to nestle it in between my two desks so I can keep it on the floor, and it's just kind of out of sight. Wasn't really possible with any of the other desktops that I've checked out. And one reason why they're able to do that is because the components are picked in a way to really maximize the use of the space. So when it comes to upgradability, you gotta be very careful. You can upgrade the CPU. The newer Ryzen CPUs with the 3D cache are more efficient, but in terms of performance, from what I was able to check out online, you're not getting much of an upgrade. In terms of the desktop 5070, that is upgradable to a 5070 Ti. I've been trying to see if you could put a 5080 in here, and you might be able to, but the problem is though, you might run into some thermal constraints just because of how small this desktop is. I'll talk more about the analytical nerdy side later on. This is still just part of the build and the design, so I really do like it. In terms of ports, you're getting 4 USB Type-A's, 1 USB Type-C, not USB 4, and obviously not Thunderbolt because it is AMD. I would have liked to see that. I did check out an Omen 35L a while back, and that USB port did support Thunderbolt 4. I find that just being able to have access to a dock is much better than having to bend down and finagle with the ports that are built into the desktop. But, you know, we're trying to keep costs down here, so I'm okay with it. And one thing, if you're more used to the gaming laptop world, just because that's kind of what I've been covering most of the time, the RTX 5070 has 3 display ports and an HDMI 2.1. So if I wanted to, I could connect every single display I have in this office to this one desktop. And you know what? There's no laptops that could really do that out the box. Another way they're able to keep costs down, and I was concerned about this at first, is the CPU cooler is air cooled, not liquid cooled. And mine comes with an 850 watt power supply. There's also 3 additional M.2 slots and a 3.5 inch bay if you want to add some more storage. Overall, I don't mind this gigantic box sitting in my office somewhere. It's been fairly acceptable. Obviously not as sleek as a laptop, but you know what, man? $2,000 versus $5,000, I'm okay with that. So I don't know where else to take this except to just get into the performance numbers. Usually with laptops, I would talk about the keyboard, the trackpad, etc. This, you bring your own keyboard and your own monitor, etc. So I guess I don't have to measure that stuff, which is awesome. I do want to start off with the temperatures because this is a smaller desktop and I want to make sure that it's able to cool it properly. So one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the temperatures here, the Ryzen 7 7800X30 throttles at 89 degrees Celsius. So if the desktop hits that temperatures, you'll lose performance instantly. But thankfully in my testing, the chip usually runs around like 65 to 75 degrees, but running something like Cinebench R26 is maxing out this entire CPU, and that's not something you'll typically be doing on a day-to-day basis, even when you're gaming. So being around 65 to 75 degrees is more than adequate, so having an air cooler in there is completely fine. And now the GPU, the 5070 specifically, thermal throttles around the 88 to 90 degree mark. And under a sustained gaming load, it's hot down here in South Florida where I live and I don't always have the AC on. Worst case scenario is getting like 80, 82 degrees. So more than acceptable. I'm not worried about thermal throttling at all. And I know I kind of touched on the fan noise when I was talking about when this is running something like Cinebench. Overall, in the Legion Space app, I've only been running it at performance mode because even when I'm gaming, it's not loud at all. But what I like is I can use my open back gaming headphones and I'm not really able to hear the fans at all. That's something I can never do with a gaming laptop. You're kind of messing around with the different profiles until you get a noise profile that's acceptable with. So overall, in terms of the temps and the fan noise, nothing to worry about. Alright, so now let's get into some of the performance. And all of these tests I did myself. So if you like any of that stuff, please hit the subscribe button. Let's start off with Cinebench R26. I reran every single device I had at that time with the new Cinebench R26. And when you look at the multi-core score, you might not be enthused, but this is an 8-core CPU and it's a gaming chip. Not much games use multi-core. There are a handful of them, but the GPU is far more important. So this is nothing to really worry about. You'll see that the Mac M series is completely destroying it. And even the laptop chips, the 16-core Ryzen AI 9, are beating it by a lot. But this chip isn't really meant to do multi-core workloads. Thankfully, you can easily upgrade your CPU if you did need more. But I'm structuring this review as more of just like a gaming device. So this first chart is kind of irrelevant for gaming, as you see when I actually start testing real games. So let's look at the single core. This is what's more important, but you might still be seeing that, hey, it's kind of middling here. Cinebench does a good job of testing what the CPU is like, but when it comes to gaming, it doesn't always tell the story. I'm just showing Cinebench up there, but when we actually get into games, you'll see the difference. So Steel Nomad Lite is the first one I want to look at. It is a benchmark, but it renders OpenGL in real time. So this chart is what made me want to make this video to begin with. It's basically trading blows with the RTX 5090 laptop. It even edges out a 5080 laptop here and there, though it is one of the more thinner, lighter 5080 laptops, but still. Even when I compare it to my Legion 7 Gen 10 5090, which right now is like $4,500, maybe $3,800 if you get it on sale. In this benchmark, it might not look like it's beating it, but wait till we actually get to some games and you'll see that. One thing to keep in mind is if you were looking to buy an older desktop, the RTX 4080 Super performs much better. And another note is this RTX 4080 Super performs very similar to the RTX 5070 Ti. So if you were to upgrade the GPU on this 5070, you'll get a sizable increase. So that's just something to keep in mind for later on. So next is a stress test. I run Steel Nomad 20 consecutive times. It's just essentially to see how this desktop holds up as the same benchmark runs again and again. If there's any type of throttling, you'll start to see the scores go down. But nope, you're seeing it around like the 53 mark the entire time, which is nice. And I've also included the best RTX 5090 laptop and also that desktop 4080 Super, so you can get an idea of how those perform. And I find Steel Nomad in general to be a very good indicator of what real games are going to be like. It's not always perfect, but it is a good starting point. That's why I like running these. Let's look at our first real game, and this is Cyberpunk. This is max out settings with ray tracing overdrive, so it's using path tracing, which is global illumination, and it's a better way of doing reflections, etc. It's very, very heavy on the GPU, and as you can see at 4K, it is practically unplayable on just about every system I've had except for the RTX 4080 Super. If you were to get a 5070 Ti, it might shoot a bit higher. So this is overall giving you an idea of what it's going to be like to max out this at 4K if you wanted to play the most latest games with the highest settings, with ray tracing, etc. And I'm using the DLSS Ultra when I'm running this benchmark. So let's look at QHD. Things do much better here. You can still see that some of the laptops are beating it by a bit. Not a crazy amount. A typical RTX 5090 is going to perform 14 to 15% better. But when you're looking at this little bit amount of frames, under 60, going from 48 to like 52 or even 56 isn't as noticeable to your eyes as it may seem. So let's get into another game. It's actually Cyberpunk again. I started rerunning this benchmark without any ray tracing so you can see what rasterized looks like, and I don't have as much devices tested, but if you were comparing this to the RTX 5090 Razer Blade from last year, this is how that performs. I even compared it to the MacBook Pro 16 with the M4 Max if you want an idea for how that looks like. So another thing you can even consider too is maybe just getting a MacBook from last year and also a gaming desktop. Once Macs start to get better gaming support, which I believe it will at some points. Next is Black Myth Wukong, and this does a lot better than the gaming laptops. I do want to make a note here though that there might be some caveats here. I ran this benchmark just recently, like a few days ago from when I'm posting this video, while the laptops I ran last year, maybe there's been some driver improvements, but this is doing unusually better than the gaming laptops. But even the 4080 Super desktop is doing much better than any of the laptops, so maybe something about Black Myth performs better on a desktop. Avatar Frontiers, it's practically in line with all of the gaming laptops. At 4K, you're getting 45 FPS, but the best that I tested was on the Razer Blade 18, you're getting 49, so 9 more frames per second, and the Razer Blade 18 cost $5,399 this year, which is crazy. I don't know, not much else to say here. It's pretty equivalent. Again, if you wanted to upgrade to the 4080 Super or 5070 Ti, that's about what you'll get. Moving on, Horizon Zero Dawn, an older game, and I like testing this because it's only rasterized. I'm not using any type of DLSS, no frame generation, just good old-fashioned rasterized gaming. And I want to actually start off with the 1080p score. This is actually also a good indicator of how it will perform in competitive shooters. This 7800 X3D is really good at those more CPU-bound games. And at Horizon Zero Dawn, because it is an older game, the GPU is no longer the bottleneck at 1080p. It's the CPU, and I'm getting the best score I've ever gotten on this at 1080p. At QHD, same thing. It's doing just as good as the desktop that I had. And at 4K, you're getting 97 FPS, 8% less than the best gaming laptop I've ever checked out, which was at Legion 7. But like I said, that performs unusually good. Alright, so that was a lot of numbers. Hope you guys are still with me. If not, I hope you at least skipped to this part. So overall, I think it's pretty close to what you'll get on most gaming laptops, and it's much less money, and I really enjoy using this. For me though, at the end of the day, I missed having a gaming laptop. I ended up just going back to the Razer Blade 16. This is a 5090 model, and I did get this one with 64 gigabytes of RAM, and I'll be doing a review on it soon. I just love having a laptop because sometimes I want to play downstairs in my living room. I just want to be able to plug this in with the HDMI. Sometimes I just want to play in my bed, etc. So it just depends on who you are, but When I'm having my best gaming sessions though, it's connected to my monitor. And actually I would say still, even 90% of the time, this is still hooked up to a monitor. So you just really gotta know what you need, whether you want a gaming desktop or a laptop, but whichever one you choose, you'll be happy with either one, especially at the price of this Legion 5. So I bought this with my own money from Best Buy. Today's my last day to return it. I have chosen to keep this razor blade because this blade is over $5,000 and I just don't have the money to keep both of them. If I could, I would. So that's just kind of where I land. So the right setup for you will just depend on your situation and how you use your desktop or your laptop. But anyway, guys, that'll do it for this one. If you want links, I'll try to have links down below. They help the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.